Well, welcome. My name is Louisa Elkin. I'm the current president of the board of directors of the Hornby Festival, and I get to be your MC tonight. So it's the 30th Hornby Festival. 30 years. It's really amazing. I'm really excited. I just want to speak to all the people who are standing outside in the fresh air and make sure that you feel part of all of this program as well. They're all listening out there looking at the birdhouses and our overflow. So we have a really special program for the opening reception. We're really excited. We've been working on this for months as a board and as the staff. And we have 5 speakers and a short break, and then we have the Purcell Quartet. And I just want to make sure that everybody takes a moment to turn off anything that's going to beep or squeak or squawk or make any noises whatsoever that would disturb the peace. We also are asking people not to take photographs or any form of photography tonight in the videoing. All right, so tonight we're gathering as a community to do 3 things: to reflect, which after 30 years is an important thing to do, to celebrate, and to honor. This is a very special festival and a very special island, and a lot of magic happens when we get together and listen to a really accomplished artist, and the whole room gets transported when that grand piano gets played in here, or when hundreds of people are dancing down at the farm to an amazing band and watching the moon rise up over the water. And it's high summer, and for hundreds and hundreds of years people have gathered and celebrated in the high summer season, and that's what we do when we have the festival. So in terms of reflecting, a lot of people have walked around and looked at those photographs and thought, boy, I was 30 years younger. And it's kind of fun to look back at yourselves and what you did 30 years ago. This festival has flourished and it's succeeded. And anything that's lasted 30 years, I think we could clearly say is a success. And celebrating, we're going to hear some testimonies tonight. Some of the foundations that were the builders of the festival. It's gone from strength to strength. And our whole purpose is to create beauty and breathe some vitality and gather together and have some fun. That's what the festival is all about. We want to honor the people, the past and the present, who give their energy, their time, their creativity, their commitment, and all their goodwill to make this happen every single year. It's a big project. I want to make sure people get a chance to go and look at the historical retrospective, calling it a show, but it's really just a gathering of all the memorabilia from 1981 through to 2011 on the 3 walls in behind the kitchen. I want to thank Bob Keane. That's a little wave, Bob. I want to thank him because I had the most wonderful history lessons and had a really great time meeting with Bob and going through all the photos and all of the materials from the past. He had a lot of knowledge and advice, and it was very helpful for me. I want to also, really acknowledge Michael Hornsby's show. It's a beautiful show. It's going to be up for the duration of the festival. There we go. And bear with me, but we have a list of wonderful sponsors and people to thank. So I'm going to just read through all of our sponsors. So 32 Books, AFC Construction, Blue Sky Design, Cardboard House Bakery Businesses, Coast Realty, BC Ferries, Ground Control Enterprises, Hornby Island Co-op, Hornby Island Painting, Key Graphics, Middle Mountain Mead, PAW, Seabreeze Lodge, Cabrera Vineyard and Winery, Union Bay Credit Union, and Arnie Olson and Asnina Kassam. And I'd like to just take a minute to ask David to give us a little update on how Arnie is doing, because it's always good to wrap him up with lots of love and send it to him.
Thanks, Louisa. No. Anyway, I've been talking to Asmina every day for the past 3 weeks in St. Paul's Hospital where Arnie is, and the news is he's getting better. Now you can check. Yeah, as of today. I thought I would just sort of give an update because, for one thing, I know a lot of people really care about Arnie and love him, appreciate his wonderful spirit and generosity in so many ways. And Asmina is probably coming up tomorrow for the weekend, so I thought if I could let people know how Arnie's doing, people would just welcome Asmina and not say, how's Arnie? So I would just say, without a lot of details, he's been really sick, as you probably know, for a couple of years in particular. He's been in hospital 3 weeks, and he was close to death 2 weeks ago, pulled through by some really intensive care. Got through his health crisis, much to our relief, and he's getting better, he's getting stronger. They're trying to build up his nutritional status. As you probably know, he was very thin, to put it mildly. Anyway, his health is improving. We're hoping that he'll get out of hospital in about a week, barring any complications, and hopefully we'll see him on Hornby not too long after that. So that's today's health report on Arnie. If you see Asmina, as I say, welcome her and try not to ask her about Arnie's health. And she's just here for the weekend. And I was thinking, as we've done in the past, we've sent Arnie sort of tangible evidence of our love through the heart quilts and this and that, and he's in hospital and he's really bored. He says it gets worse. The healthier he gets, the more bored he feels. Anyway, if you could send him cards, some of you may have his address, but I was suggesting that we keep his mailing address at the entrance to the hall and at the entrance to the field. So if you'd like to send him a card, I know he'd appreciate it. He loves it. He takes the cards and he puts them up, and it helps get him through those days. So the address will be available. And yeah, I think that's pretty well all I want to say. Just hope that he continues to improve.
Thank you.
So I'd like to invite our first speaker to come up to the podium, and that's Lee Cross, who was really the founder and the original person to start this festival in the first place.
So, good evening. I'll be as brief as I can because brevity is the soul of wit, as Mr. Shakespeare said so aptly. The original festival. Can't hear me?
Is it back? They'll need
How's it go now? Can you hear? Okay. The original, I believe, Festival Society was called the Hornby Island Chamber Music Society. And it was born in the Courtney Youth Music Camp. The Purcell Quartet was polishing the Beethoven quartets there and doing a lot of teaching. I was we'll call it a student. I didn't learn much. But the Purcells and I became quite friendly. And one evening we were eating pie and telling off-color jokes in the cafeteria, and I forget who it was, said, well, let's do the Beethoven String Quartets on Hornby Island. Well, in those days, Hornby Island had a maximum summer population of almost 500 people, and a steady winter population of about 150, which was made up of some magnificent old-timers who had survived the Depression, and us bumptious young freaks. And so everybody had a big laugh. Beethoven String Quartets on Hornby Island. And we thought about it and said, well, why not do the Beethoven String Quartets on Hornby Island? So we did. I came back and formed a a society. Because for some reason or other, we had to have a society. I forget the legalese of it, but that's what it was. And it was called the Hornby Chamber Music Society. And some of the original board of directors of that society are here tonight. Bob and Kathy and Helen, and I think there were a few more. If I've forgotten you, it's because I'm old and forgetful. But the original hall was just a lower space right here, without the steps, without the galleries around the edge, without the stage. And I'd like to take a minute to remember the old timers that built that first hall under a centennial grant. They were some tough old birds. Barney French, Bill Arthurs, I think Keith Stonehouse was in on it. Just about all the men on the island contributed to the building. That was before I got here, because it was a centennial grant. I think it was a BC centennial grant, was it? Or was it Canada centennial grant? They were a great bunch of guys. I was privileged to know them. Bill, remember? No. Cartwright, Seabreeze, my best friend on the island. Bill Fowler. I'd like to take a moment to remember Bill Fowler and his trombone and his bass fiddle and his work on the old Centennial Hall. Anyway, I promoted the event as well as we could, and as I could, and the Purcell Quartet came here and played the complete Beethoven string quartets in a series of 6 concerts. And this old hall was just about 2 degrees hotter than a pizza oven and sold out to capacity. And it was a tremendous success because everybody, because they didn't know anything about music, could listen and could hear. That doesn't happen very often. Okay, we did it 3 more times, I believe, until the last time, the last year, partly due to a mistake on my part, because I convinced the quartet to play some of the Second Viennese School of Music, that's Schoenberg and that gang. And also, the other big problem was the audience had started to learn something about music, and they'd forgotten how to listen. So the last year was a disaster. The quartet didn't get much of a fee. I spent several months paying off the hall rent, and I handed the society over, and it became the Hornby Festival Society, and it went on from there. Now, I'd like to ask you a favor. I want you to forget everything you know about music. I'm serious. Because then you'll be able to hear. You're going to hear 2 of the original Purcell Quartet members that played those first concerts, plus 2 people, talented musicians, playing an absolutely magnificent piece of music. And they probably, since they've just met, it will not be the most technically superb performance of this music that ever happened. But it will be the only time you ever hear this piece played by these 4 people in this hall. Music is not something you pull off the wall like a roll of towels or put another record on the player. Music is something when you participate and you hear it, and the performers are grappling with it, and you can feel their energy and their talent and their skill and their whole life's experience flowing through their arms into their bows. So I ask you, forget everything you know about music tonight and just listen. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Helen Honora, And thank you, Lee. I had a knock on the door one day, and much to my surprise, Lee appeared at the door and said, "How would you like to be a director of the Musical Society?" Okay. I never did a thing. I mean, he was the boss. But as Lee said, the island was a very different place in those days, and there were so few of us. And I thought maybe 1,000 summer visitors, but Lee says 500, so I'll go with him. And we'd have music and dances and that, but nothing like the variety of entertainment that we have nowadays. It was very different. I don't have the words to describe how exciting it was to have that concert music in our own hall in such an intimate atmosphere, and we could hear them. With more people living here and an improved ferry service, we could have lots of musicians. So, Lee Cross planted the seed. And for me, it all began with this book. We all got a chance to buy it when the Purcell String Quartet came. And for the first time, I'd always heard music, but I had never seen it. I was a visual person, and I could watch it and listen to it, and it came very deep, deep inside of me. That wonderful week of Beethoven quartets. Now, Lee planted the seeds, and a few years later, Tom Drury took that seed, and in his hands the festival grew and it flourished. Oh, how wonderful it was to be a part of that. Even if at times we had grave doubts as to whether we would survive. One of our first meetings was at the Laffins, and we needed money. And Eleanor said, she got this sort of inspiration. She said, "Well, Julian has his child allowance." Julian was 3. "Julian, do you want to give us your child allowance?" That was one of our... There was some opposition. People wondered if we were going to bring too many tourists to the island. But the reality was that the people we had here were so supportive that we almost didn't need the extra visitors. Fundraising was always a problem. I'm going to lower this if you don't mind, because I'm short. Yeah. Was always a problem, but with Tom and Mary Mackenzie and many, many other board members, too numerous to mention, we pulled it off. Loans from members, secret angels, grant applications, bingo games, trips to Ashland, appeals to businesses were but a few of the ways that we raised money. Can you imagine trying to feed and billet 60 Canadian children opera people? With so few of us, we would set up the hall, make the cheesecakes, serve the bar, clean the hall, clean the toilets, and if we had energy left over, we might get to hang out with some of the musicians. The exciting part of those early days in the festival was having someone like Tom, who had the knowledge and the background to put together the most exciting and challenging programs. He stretched us, and we loved it. My sort of favorite individual memories are realizing that I really liked bar talk, and then having Maureen Forrester eat dinner on my front porch. And Tom, do you remember when we were called the cultural elite? And so we were in the Hornby Fair with tiaras and top hats and evening gowns to spoof our title. Lee and Tom, you made huge changes in our lives. I thank you so much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Tom Drury.
Yeah, I think you you know, when you present challenges, as we certainly did, big time, I think you win people and lose them, and we certainly lost a lot of people as well. And as Lee said, he lost a lot of people when he brought in the second Viennese school, and we did that and more so. And you know, I remember one of the things that was a clincher, would have been like probably 1994 or 5, when we presented a concert of music by Stockhausen and Boulez and people, and there was actually a write-up in the Paris newspaper. And my God, you think we had committed mortal sins that we don't want people to know that Hornby Island is doing. They will all come here. Well, here you are. You're probably not here to hear Stockhausen and Boulez, but you should be, and someday you will, I'm sure. You know, Lee started this in 1981, as he said, and Helen has said, with the Beethoven quartets in the complete cycle, which is absolutely a knockout if you can go through those 6 concerts and experience really a lifetime of one of the greatest musicians that ever lived. And wonderfully, in this festival, you'll have a chance to hear the sonatas for piano and violin, which we actually did here too in sometime in the 1990s with Mark Destrube and Robert Holliston. It was a fabulous event, and this will be too, so I encourage you to go to those 3 concerts. You will not regret it, believe me. The first time I ever came to Hornby Island was 1974. A friend of mine had inherited from her father a small plot of land in the Sandpiper area and asked me if I would build a cabin for her there. So I said, oh sure, I was a daring young man at the time, in my early 40s. Said, sure, I can do anything. So I spent the summer here doing that. I met quite a few people. I remember Don Nixon borrowing tools and things from him, and meeting Jack Shadbolt, who gave me a ride from the co-op and back one day, and various people like that. The deal was that after I built this cabin, that I wasn't paid for it, it was sort of my accommodation, all that was taken care of. I lived in a tent, I think. And then that I could stay out here anytime I felt like it if the family wasn't using the cabin. As it turned out, they hardly ever used it. So in 1984, I was living in Vancouver and having a horrible time, both emotionally, financially, everything you name it. I said, I think I'll go to Hornby Island for the summer and just collect myself and try to get my life back together again. So 11 years later, I got back to Vancouver in 1996. Anyway, what happened that summer was, and I had heard about the concerts here, and I'm sorry to say I had never actually attended one of them, but that the Beethoven quartets, the Bartók quartets, I thought, wow, this sounds like something I would love to be part of. And then the word came out that Lee was leaving the island and wasn't going to do this anymore, and is anybody interested? I threw my name in the hat. And we met. It was Bill Adams, Nora Laffin, me, and I think maybe Helen and a few other people met in Nora Laffin's kitchen. And somebody said, oh yeah, let's bring the quartet by all means, but why don't we do a few other things and call it a festival? It was then called the Hornby Midsummer Festival for some reason or other. The first one we did was 1985, and then from 1986 on, at some point, it sort of became, everyone said, oh, you do it because we don't have time. And there was a time, even about 3 or 4 years later, when I actually even got paid, believe it or not. Not very much, but did it. I don't know, you know, people in Vancouver still talk about those years because we did some incredibly challenging and unusual repertoire. We did a lot of music of the 20th century, and we did a lot of local and contemporary, brought in a lot of artists, well-known artists from around the country. We had a dance program that we did throughout the year. I can still remember we had like some of the major dance companies in Canada come and perform in this hall. It's unbelievable. They were used to performing on like gigantic stages like the Metropolitan Opera or something, and then suddenly they scale down and come here. And I remember the lighting even, they were like patching into the main currents and things like that because there wasn't enough current in the house. to do it. But they were exciting times. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who would come up here. We used to have wonderful times at Christmas and other holidays and during the festival as well. And we both agreed that these were some of the best times of our entire life. And it certainly was for me and for a lot of us who were involved in those years. So it's wonderful, and it's wonderful to see all of these people and how successful the festival continues to be. And I know it will go on for many, many years to come. I want to say, because I'm very much involved in arts advocacy in Vancouver and other political activities, that these are very tough times for the arts. Governments seem to be turning down funding for the arts, not realizing that this is actually the soul and heart of our society. We need to keep reminding our government people that this is the case and that this is important to each one of us as individuals. We want to see a vital and exciting and well-supported arts activity in our society. And if we don't do that, thank you very much. This is my political speech. And you know, it's well enough to think this and to believe it, but if you don't say it, write to your MPs, your MLAs, write to the Prime Minister, let them know that you want to see the arts being actively and fully supported in this country. We don't want to see any more cutbacks. Thank you very much. We've suffered through that. Arts organizations are collapsing around this province because of the lack of funding. We cannot have that. Sorry to say, we can't have it. So, anyway, that's, as I say, that's my political speech. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here. I want to thank Peter Wardle and Gary Duke for making sure that I got here and arranging it. It's a great pleasure to be here and see all of the people that I knew back then and still know and love and are still very much a part of my heart. Thank you so much. See you. Before I came up here, I was going through some stuff that I have at home, and I found I have a complete collection of brochures from the Hornby Festival from 1985 to 1997, I think it is, and a whole bunch of other stuff of various posters, little press clippings, and things like that. And some of you may recall the CBC used to record a lot of concerts up here, and there are the tapes from those years.
That was kind of like Christmas in midsummer. I just wanted to say, if anybody's finding it too warm, I mean, it's not quite the pizza oven yet, but if anybody's really, really warm or uncomfortable, this programming is able to be heard outside. We can't really change the temperature in the room, but if you're just too hot, feel free to cool off and get some fresh air.
Can you open the doors?
Too much noise from the road.
I think we're going to take a break after the next two speakers, so I think we'll be able to make it through, okay? We have two more speakers coming, and I will introduce them both, and they'll come up one after the other. So we have Marilyn Mullen and Sue Kelly. So welcome them.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. I mean, it's a great day for me because I haven't been associated with the festival for a couple of years. But during my association here, I think I was on the board for about 10 years or somewhere around that anyway. We have an archives now too, so that's a wonderful addition to the archives that was just offered to us here. And Tom, I've never met you, but I certainly enjoyed your talk, and I'm also turning 80 this week. As much as I'd like to not read my notes, I'm afraid my memory is getting a little faded. And I didn't want to leave out some of the important parts. I also need glasses. When I came to the island, Hornby Island, in 1996, the festival had entered its second phase of development. It was under the direction of Moira Armour at this time, a rather curmudgeonly but generous, loving woman. Took a while to get to know her, but she was great once you got to know her. She was determined to keep Hornby in the cultural limelight. Working with the board of directors, she desired to maintain the classical elements of the festival programs, but since government funding, which we just talked about, was drying up even then, she decided that we needed to add some more popular events. These had to be introduced to make the operation more viable. It was recognized that three major hurdles had to be overcome. Decreased government support and funding, and support from the local and extended communities was crucial. I consider the local community us, the extended community are the visitors that come to visit us, plus the government and all the supporting activities. A debt of approximately $20,000 had to be resolved. Moira, Mary Mackenzie, and I went to Victoria to request continued support from Cultural Services, which was in jeopardy because they considered our operation to be non-professional. We did not have a paid professional director. I mean, this is unbelievable. I mean, I came from an arts organization before this, and the fact that they were going to cut us back because we didn't have a professional, I mean, that's a non-volunteer director, they were going to cut out our funding. It was therefore determined by our board, because Moira's expertise in many attributes, she was well qualified for the position. She was at that time on the board of directors. She resigned from that and reluctantly accepted a paid position. But Moira was undaunted with this bureaucratic decision, because any salary that came her way was turned right back into purchasing supplies and the various staging and instruments, lighting, everything came. She actually put her own money into it. The board then set about building up more support from the communities, keeping the main focus on classical music. Moira sought out emerging artists and those willing to donate or reduce their fees for their skills and talents. She involved individuals, families, and especially children. Local artists, musicians, and writers were invited to participate in programs. She worked with the school to bring the Missoula Children Theatre to Hornby. Tony Wilson, one of our prized local musicians, was commissioned to compose music for the Joe Trio. Nancy Adams from We Dance Group delighted the community and guests with special shows. A special off-the-wall wearable art show was revisited. I was always reminded that our Off the Art show was not the first, there had been a previous one, and they both were very successful. All the artists got together and created these wonderful works of art, and we had a fashion show, and that was the other thing, I wasn't allowed to call it a fashion show. Moira would not allow it to be called a fashion show. It had to be an art off-the-wall show, or fiber art. Moira has special flair for decor and set design, stage settings and decorations, including Hornby's beautiful flowers, which were all donated. Everything was presented with attention to detail. That was the other thing, that the flowers, they were just wonderful, big bouquets would arrive from the various. I can't mention people's names here because if I start mentioning one, I'm sure I forget the more important ones. Finally, the elimination of a substantial debt of approximately $20,000 had to be resolved. Box office revenues were static, ticket costs had to remain affordable, and the hall capacity was limited to 160 individuals. That's the fire marshal decided they had to do that. Outdoor events were planned. An extremely generous gesture made by Arnie Olson to donate his beautiful property to host events was gratefully accepted. And increased revenue from these popular events, together with cost-cutting programs inveigled by Maura, and believe me, she really inveigled so many programs that she cut down to the veriest bone and took advantage of every offer, every inch of energy on the island, I think. Fundraising in the community itself. House tours, we had house tours, and the debt was finally eliminated in 2 years. This was considered an amazing feat for a nonprofit society. I have been involved in one for 20 years previous to this, and I couldn't believe it. It's just the most difficult thing for a nonprofit society to get itself out of debt. A new youth vitality gripped the society, but we subsequently suffered a great loss when Maura passed away. She, along with Tom, left the Hornby community a great ongoing legacy. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this evening.
I'm slightly younger, but I'm still going to refer to my notes. I wasn't on the board for 10 years. I was on the board for 4 years, and I tell my friends I count those in dog years. When I was elected to the festival board, I remember Maura saying to me, and if you recall those annual general meetings, they were minuscule, right? I mean, it was basically the board that was being elected. Maura turns to me and says, "You're a lawyer, you know how to chair meetings, you're the chair." And that was how I became president. Little did I know at that moment that Maura viewed the board as a group of volunteers, while we thought of ourselves as members of the board. As most of you know, Maura was not the easiest person to collaborate with, and she carried out her functions as an artistic director, or should I say boss of all things, without much interaction with the board. When the board suggested changes she did not approve of, her silence could be deafening, or she simply ignored board decisions. For example, we had decided that a new banner might be in order, and Maura disapproved of that idea and just ignored our discussions about that. And the end result was that our very first new banner said Hornby Island Festival instead of Hornby Festival. So we had an extra word in there, and she had never said a word about that. Or we wanted to take a look at some concession prices. We decided that we just wanted to get the costing and see if we were making a few dollars on the concession or not. So quite a bit of work went into the collection of data, including getting prices from the co-op, and based on that information, the board set prices for our concession. When we turned up for the first festival, the first performance that festival, we were met with a big surprise. Maura had changed the prices to the ones she wanted. We had to ask ourselves again, were we volunteers or were we the board? No matter. Maura's dedication to the festival was never in doubt. And were it not for Maura's contribution to the festival, I really do wonder if we would be celebrating this 30th year of the Hornby Festival. And would there be this 30th celebration without the incredible contributions of Hornbyites over the years, billeting and feeding artists, building stages, doing electrical work, staffing concessions, marketing products, and all those hundreds of other volunteer hours spent over the years by almost everyone who ever lived or spent time on Hornby. In no particular order, I would like to acknowledge all the board members who spent time with me through some unusual times, because of course the years that we were on the board, there were some major changes that happened. Barbara Freeland, Pat Hargrave, Bob McCory, Judith Lawrence, Mary Tarbotton, Jean Barker, Tina Harrison, Amaryllis Farrell, Louise Jarvis, Joanne Owetsland, Ken Startup, Bill Adams, Alan Beatty, Shakti Coppin, Fred Hunt, Lawrence Nyberg, Shay Rankin, Pat Mullen, Julia Waddington, Sheila Carrick, Hannah Siegel, Laura Chalfin, Catherine Harms. Some, for various reasons, stayed only for a little while, and others formed a dedicated group committed to the welfare of the festival, while others still went on to form and work on subsequent dedicated boards. And I think some board members do need singling out, that during my period. Pat Hargrave and Mary Tarbotton were for their stellar merchandising. What a job they did. They were incredible, those two. They were quite a team. And I also want to acknowledge Glenn Startup for suggesting and facilitating the gift of the festival, to the festival, of our current logo. During our time as board members, Maura had become ill, yet Maura soldiered on without letting on that anything was wrong. Mysterious disappearances away from Hornby were not explained, and we were left to guess the seriousness of her failing health. The year she died, we were left with a not quite completed festival program, and Claire Cronia thankfully completed the program. And my thought is there anything that Claire cannot do? Then we needed to think about the following year's program while searching for a new artistic director, a search we did not want to rush. And Judith Lawrence, the other Judith Lawrence, is the board member who was instrumental in organizing that program. And lastly, and I know I speak for the board that was then, we are very proud that we were the ones who hired Deirdre Atkinson as artistic director. Just lucky and she found us. They were interesting and sometimes frustrating years, but I think we all had a very fun time, and I in particular had a blast during my years on the board. And I wish the festival many, many more decades of joyful seasons. Thank you.
Wow, I sure enjoyed that. That was amazing. Thank you, all five of you, to have that history and that perspective of where everybody's come from helps everybody know where to go next. It's wonderful. I want to say a few more thank yous before we have our very, very short break. I want to thank the people who are billeting our guests and our artists. Krista and Bernhard Weiss, thank you. Sheila and Doug Carrick, Judith Lawrence, the other Judith Lawrence, Julie Glover and Ted Upward. And I also want to thank all our members and donors, you the audience, and our volunteers. And before we take a break, I would like to introduce the current board and the current staff. So they're just going to stand up where they are rather than all come up here. So our Vice President is Gary Duke. Our second Vice President is Stephanie Wells. Is Stephanie? And our Treasurer is Verna Kemmerly. Our newest board member is Jamie Bennett, who is helping with merchandise. Also a professional editor, which has been very helpful. And our two most long-standing board members are Laura Chalfin and Bob McCory. So the staff is amazing. Everybody's working together like a finely tuned machine. It's wonderful. It's a really fun board to work on. If anybody would like to join us, we would love to have a few more members. And it is a great board to be on. It really is. So our staff, I would like to also just say congratulations to this staff member, our artistic director on our new baby Otis, born very, very recently on the 12th of July. Welcome to the community, little Otis. And Deirdre is on maternity leave, obviously. So Claire Cronia, the amazing Claire, is our production manager, but also stand-in artistic director for this festival. And Claire, where are you? Also, our administrator and front of house person is Charlene Logan. And our two summer student assistants are Lily Graham and Emily Harrison. So we are going to have a very short break, 5 minutes. We're going to try and get some air in here and refresh the oxygen. And in 5 minutes we will have the Purcell Quartet to play for you on our stage. They insisted on playing back here because that's where they always play, and I think it's a great little message to us all that we can all look in a different direction and have a different perspective. So have a little quick break, don't go too far. We will be flashing the lights and reminding you to come back in just a bit.